Being different isn't about being louder, it's about being more intentional. AI is everywhere now, but the leaders who will stand out will be the ones who know how to use it creatively, responsibly, and add that human edge back in. And if today made you think, good. That's the whole point. Welcome back to What's Kenner French Thinking. I am Elaine, your co-host here with Kenner French. And today we're going to be talking about vastq.com, which is his brand new website, which talks about quantum computing. So hi, Kenner, how are you doing? Introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll get into it.
That sounds kind of nerdy, but it's really going to end up saving people money, saving entrepreneurs money. That's the net effect when they go to VastQ and our new quantum services. I'm all excited. Who am I at? Kenner French. I run vastsolutionsgroup.com. We've been doing a lot of research in artificial intelligence, been doing AI for quite some time. We started in 2010, had our own model in 2018. I'm an author, wrote #1 bestseller,
ModernMillions.ai.
ModernMillions.ai, Amazon #1 bestseller. We've been doing a bunch of research on quantum computing to help lower tax liability, help with retirement planning, and also help with estate planning and asset protection for business owners. And this is a big, big deal that we've got going on at vastq.com.
Really excited, but let's back up a little bit and talk about what made you realize that entrepreneurs were approaching taxes the wrong way.
Well, typically, a tax professional or even a taxpayer will be doing the analogy of driving down the road, looking in their rearview mirror. April 15th comes. What do? They pay whatever is due to the government. Well, wait a minute. What you should be doing is prognosticating, guessing, projecting what your tax liability is going to be early in the year when you know your cash flow. Then you could kind of strategize how to lower your tax liability. Really important. So we adopted artificial intelligence as a way of doing that. But artificial intelligence isn't quite enough. Artificial intelligence still looks backwards, right? And so that's the reason we're adopting something as deep and hard to understand as quantum computing, because we know that going forward, if you can do whatever, thousands of computations to lower tax liability, you will be much better off as a taxpayer. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, so in the simplest terms possible, like explain to me like I'm a fifth grader, what is VastQ? What is its purpose?
Yeah. So let's start with artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? It basically is a software, if you really think about it. And it just predicts it looks backwards ultimately, but it really just predicts what the next letter is, what the next digit is, what the next sentence is in, let's say, information, data. Okay. And so what we wanted to do was figure out ways to limit tax liability, help with estate planning, help with asset protection by looking forward. So what we have done is we've decided to take, basically a page out of the future and figure out what's going to be the next thing to help with that. And that became quantum computing. Quantum computing is really the final frontier for computing. It's let's say a quantum computer. You've probably seen them. There's those chandelier-like looking things, and at the very, very, very bottom, there's this little tiny computer chip, and it's really, really cold. It's kept in a cold environment, and it, believe it or not, looks at these little things called atoms. And these atoms are the ones that are making these calculations. Actually, they're fake atoms, but anyway, artificial atoms. But basically, that's what is, because it's so cold and it's so quiet and it's not shaky, as an example. That's what can make calculations on a massive scale, universal scale. And so the question is, well, will that help me to lower my taxes? Let's just say, you and I were talking about someone who's got, I think you said a $300,000 tax liability in the state of California. Well, one way to figure out how to combat that legally, ethically, and morally is put it through a quantum computer process and see if, well, through massive calculations, if we can lower the tax liability for her in this example. So in the most simple terms, is quantum computing allows to do massive calculations on a universal scale and potentially could help lower tax liability by projecting forwards instead of what everyone else is doing by looking in the rearview mirror and saying April 15th comes, this is what you owe in taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. So on your website, I went on there today and I saw it, and there's this big saying that you have this slogan: stop counting rocks, start running simulations. Now, that sounds really fun and fancy and easy to say, but what does that actually mean in real life terms?
So instead of trying to figure out, back in the old days, or even still now, people or tax providers, you know, taxpayers, they're using paper still, which is crazy, to fill out their taxes using Excel spreadsheets to figure out what their tax liability is. Well, instead of doing it that, try to figure out on a massive scale based on massive computations strategies to lower the tax liability. I don't want to spend in that lady's case. I don't want to spend $300,000 again legally, ethically, and morally, unless I can figure out ways to mitigate or lower my tax liability. Quantum computing is more expensive than the traditional, let's say, you know, tax provider. But what I would say is it will, generally speaking, save a heck of a lot of money for someone who potentially is paying $300,000 in taxes. It can figure out ways on an astronomical scale how to lower tax liability. So that's the basis of everything, of all this, the foundation of everything. What's the best way to save money? The one way of doing that in general with your taxes is to use these quantum computing things because it's so much easier than, well, trying to figure it out on your own. Think about this. The tax code's huge. It fills up a full room at the IRS. Think about that. Do you want, meaning a computer? So do you want to have I mean, what's the best way to combat that? It's the most advanced computer system that we know of in humanity, and that's a quantum computer. And it's the new wave. Everyone's going to be doing this going forward. We're just a little early, as we were with artificial intelligence as well.
Yeah. So from like you're talking, like just switch over to quantum computing, but you're talking to potentially somebody who's using Excel. What do I need to
Yeah,
do? Like, what are
right.
these steps? Give me a one, two, three here.
Yeah, give us your data. That's what I would say. The more data, the better, and then we can figure out if the quantum computing can help. In generally speaking, it can. It's got to be on a massive scale. It's got to be someone who's paying a lot in taxes. But the more data we get from you, let's say your last 3 years of tax returns, your P&L, your balance sheet, et cetera, as an entrepreneur, then we can figure out pretty quickly the best way to lower your tax liability. And I'll give an analogy. I'm trying to make this, and I know it's heady stuff. Imagine if you're going from, let's say, Seattle, where I live, Bainbridge Island, to Florida, let's say Miami. Well, you could go a whole bunch of different ways. I don't know, probably a million different ways. Well, do you want to be in a car going without a GPS, as an example, going kind of all over the place, trying to figure out how to get to Florida from Seattle? Or do you want to have guidance how to do it? Well, a quantum computer ultimately figures it out like that based on it. Massive calculations of how to get you, in this case, from Seattle to Miami. That's the same thing for taxes. You don't want to guess. You don't want to guess what your tax liability is. You don't want to guess based on whatever your CPA says April 15th. What you want to do is, well, have the guidance of a massively strong computer that can help you to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And that being in my example, Seattle to Miami, or meaning to lower your tax liability from, who knows, $300,000 to, I don't know, maybe hopefully zero, or maybe even a small amount. That's the ultimate goal, is to do it in such a way that you can lower your tax liability as an entrepreneur.
And is this the thing that you're calling prescriptive intelligence? Is that what you're explaining here?
We got prescriptive intelligence. That's exactly right. I know it sounds like kind of heady, but the thought behind it is you're using a prescription, or what we call a script, to lower your tax liability. And I'll give the analogy. Instead of, remember how I said you're kind of driving from Seattle to Florida, right? Seattle to Miami. A quantum computer can figure out simultaneously all the different routes. It runs all the different routes all at the same time, and in a split second gives you the quickest answer, the quickest way to get from point A to point B. Same thing with your tax liability. It figures out astronomically quickly how to figure out how to lower your tax liability. We just need the data. I know it's like, using a big sledgehammer for a tiny little nail, but it's the future of tax liability. We knew AI was going to be the future of lowering tax liability. Luckily, we were way in advance of everyone else. We had our own model, 2018. We want to do the same thing with quantum computing. Quantum computing is the final frontier for doing analysis for numbers. There's just no doubt about that.
And so you're talking about like just give me your data. Now that's pretty, especially in a privacy era, we've got everything's online. How safe is let me put all my tax data, let me put all my financial data into quantum computing. How safe is that? Like, what kind of things are being done to make sure that my information is not being leaked elsewhere?
Yeah, very good point. Thank you for mentioning that. So as an example, we're asking for the same data that a good tax provider should ask for. Give us all your data, right? But then the question is, well, what do we do with it that's different than a normal tax provider, let's just say, because we're not a normal tax provider, clearly. So what we do is we assign a numerical value to the client. So the information is veiled from even the quantum universe and also from the universe that extends beyond that, because we get it. We get it. Anything could be pierced soon as it comes to cybersecurity. And we just do it in such a way that we veil the client's information from the universe that is quantum and then also the cyber world as well. Because that is going to be an issue, by the way, with quantum computing in a big, big way. Cybersecurity is at risk. I will just tell you that in a big, big way. We should all be a little worried about that.
What is the government or the powers that be doing about those risks?
Yeah, good question. You mean on a broader scale? Yeah, let's talk about that. So, the government just came out with something just a while ago, that said we need to be ready as as far as citizens in the United States and also as commerce goes for banking, as an example, banking, cybersecurity, and anything where there's even the government realm. So the effort has been put forth by the government, and there are going to be strict regulations going forward. So our information as consumers, as private citizens, are not pierceable or cannot be, um, let's just say, hacked. I'll just use the term hacked by bad actors, either locally in the United States or in other countries, because because quantum can break through pretty much any privacy encryption. It's really scary what potentially could happen. Believe me, that's something to think about. And the government's doing what it can. It just came out again with something a while back, making it a mandate for banks, et cetera, to make sure that they are prepared for this thing called Q Day, where quantum computing can pierce and hack pretty easily all of our passwords, et cetera, our logins, et cetera.
That's actually fairly scary. So yeah, like we should definitely think about that when we're doing it. But I mean, it is the way things are going, and there's going to be risks, and sometimes we're going to jump in and figure out that we didn't know how to swim, and we're going to have to figure out real fast. So, Godspeed to us, I guess. Is quantum computing though only for the ultra wealthy entrepreneurs at this point, right now? And how do you see it changing in the future?
That's so many good questions. I'm going to throw out right now. We're in beta, by the way, because it's new. We've got 7 clients who are going down that path of utilizing these services. By the way, it's brand new. Number one. Number two, and by the way, one's a professional sports organization. They want to see how to kind of optimize their, if you will, lineup. Number one. Then number two, we have a client who's a high net worth individual. He wants to be able to, mitigate his tax liabilities because he's paying a lot, and on and on. But what I would say on top of that, the answer to your question is right now, I'm going to say it's still kind of in beta form. We're only doing, limited amounts of calculations like, what we're talking about. Or if you want to, figure out logistics, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a whole bunch of trucks, you want to optimize your logistics. So there's just, I would say, a relatively small number of use cases. Taxes is one of them as an example. But what I would say is on a go forward basis, I think it's going to be a little bit easier for kind of ma and pa to utilize quantum computing. Right now, it's still for think of the scientists, researchers, and I guess high net worths and big corporations. But over time, it's going to make it so the average ma can use it, ma and pa, if you will. But right now, we're still a little early. But it's something to keep an eye on as an entrepreneur. I'm very excited that we've been able to get on the kind of the front of the train versus the end of it, because I want to be able to do this is the final frontier for me as a entrepreneur, because I knew that this was going to be something that can help with investments, help lower tax liability. So we're a little early. So the answer to your question is right now I would say it might not be for the normal ma and pa, but it's something to keep an eye on, because again, as I mentioned, Q Day is coming up, and it used to be 2035. Now they're talking about making it 2028 potentially. So it's fast approaching. It's going to be a thing for society. I can promise you that.
So when do you, so you're in beta right now. What kind of participants are you looking for this beta? And then how long are you going to be in the beta program?
Yeah, thanks. Well, anyone who needs, you know, calculation heavy projects. So it's not only we're just using it for tax. Tax is a calculation heavy project, but as I mentioned, about the sports organization, or what's another good use case as an example? A company has a whole bunch of employees as an example, and they want to optimize pay scales. Quantum computing can be used for that because you can do massive calculations to figure out where what the pay scale should be for all the business, all the employees, as an example. I'll throw out a couple other use cases. There's a company is paying taxes all over the country, and they want to figure out kind of their tax liability, how to optimize where they're positioning their resources as far as marketing goes, because the taxes are eating up some of their profits. That's another use case. So really, the answer to your question is wherever there's a huge number of calculations, that's going to be a candidate to potentially use quantum computing.
Yeah. So do you have like a method that you walk them through? Like I saw that there's something called the Golden Path Report. What is that, or how what is the process that they go through once they enter that beta test?
Yeah. Right now, everyone's specifically because it's a beta, everyone's kind of customized, which is an issue for us internally. It's a lot of work, but the process, generally speaking, is we get all the data, we we analyze it to clean it up, if you will. By the way, we use artificial intelligence, our own little system through our system called Einstein, our kind of legacy system. And then we bring it up into the quantum world. And then we bring it back down to AI to confirm the numbers and the calculations, which is funny that we use kind of old school, if you will, AI. And then we package it for the client in line with quantum regulations and industry norms. So it's a true process to figure out if we're, in this case, optimizing tax liability. Whatever we can do to lower tax liability legally with that process, that's exactly what we do. So it's a truly intense process, but I know that it'll help going forward some of these high net worth individuals. As an example, that lady who was paying $300,000 in California taxes, going through a process like that can lower it. As an example, to whatever, maybe end up having $0 to be paid in taxes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's
By the
interesting
way,
that
I
you say,
know this is all heady stuff and it's kind of hard to understand. Oh,
no,
sorry, go ahead.
I think it's great, and I think it's good that we're talking about it because it is the future. It's interesting though that you made the analogy, it's so funny that we have to go back and use AI to check the quantum. But if you think about it, that's probably what we did when we first started using computers and Excel spreadsheets. Somebody then, decided, okay, let me get my calculator. Let me make sure this is right, because there's a trust factor that we have to learn. Okay, this is actually working. This actually does it better. Actually, I was the one in my little calculation, my little calculator, my fingers were fat and they hit the wrong thing. I made the wrong calculation. The computer got it right. And once you get that, you establish that trust factor, people will probably lean into quantum computing the same way that they are leaning into AI currently. But to wrap this episode up, what are like the since this is right now in beta and you're looking for a certain type of clientele, what are some of the things we can do today as regular folk that are just maybe just starting to use AI could do to lower our tax liability?
Mm. The answer to that would be look to a group that's doing prognostication, that's trying to lower the tax liability by looking forward. Now, I'm going to say this because just because we have this kind of technical stuff with this vast queue and our quantum services, we also have kind of traditional services. Also, that's important. I should also note that. So, meaning if someone's a traditional ma and pa and they're looking for tax liability, kind of advanced tax liability services using artificial intelligence, we have that. I mean, that's a no-brainer. By the way, that's still way in advance as well. But what I would say is make sure you're meeting with or working with a tax provider who, let's say early in the year, looks at your cash flow and projects your cash flow and then also projects your tax liability. I would say in a perfect world, this is going to cost you more as a taxpayer, but it's worth it. Meet with your tax provider on a quarterly basis to figure out one, what the tax liability is potentially the next quarter and also the next 6 months, et cetera. So you can strategize ways to limit your tax liability. Artificial intelligence can help the kind of the mini elements of it. So that's one thing I would consider. Work with a tax provider who's who understands artificial intelligence and who can help you to lower your tax liability in the short term, and then also look at the broader scope of things, whereas you're trying to lower the tax liability on a broader scale going forward, because it's worth it for you to figure out what your tax liability is going to be in the future and then work backwards to mitigate, to lower your taxes. No one wants, in my opinion, should be sitting down with their tax provider. Oh, April 15th comes, your tax liability is X. Well, wait a minute. I could have done a bunch of things to lower the tax liability, so it's X minus, I don't know, $300,000. It really is important to figure out going forward what your tax liability is. And our argument would be use technology to figure out what the tax liability is and work backwards to lower your tax liability. Ours is with Vast Quantum, or Vast Q, I should say, and then also with artificial intelligence. And if with nothing else, Excel, but that's probably the worst example.
Yeah. Well, I love that advice because, at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. And when you get in, a conversation with your tax provider, they can give you options and opportunities that you wouldn't even know existed had you not contacted them. So just before we leave, why don't you tell us a little bit more about ModernMillions.ai, where we can find you online, and, anything else, some final parting thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, here's my book once again, ModernMillions.ai, Make Millions, Save Millions, Protect Millions. And there you can see it's an Amazon #1 bestseller in the entrepreneurial space. That's, and you could go to ModernMillions.ai. You can pick up a copy there, or you can go to Amazon. We're all over Amazon.com. Or you can get information about me personally at rkennerfrench.com, and then our company website at vastsolutionsgroup.com. And then obviously, as we've just been talking about for the quantum world, go to vastq.com. I'm gonna throw this out because people have waited here this long. What I'm gonna say is, if you want a copy, how about this? Yeah, if you want a copy of my book, ModernMillions.ai, instead of going to Amazon, spending whatever it is, $19.99, email us at info@vastsolutionsgroup.com. Info@vastsolutionsgroup.com. Give us your address. We'll mail a copy of this to you. Obviously, we need your name, etc. But we'll mail a copy of the book to you as a way to say thanks for watching and listening to this. We really do appreciate it. And by the way, I'd love it if people would also give us a good Google review as well. I love doing this. Hopefully, this is educating people to what the future is, and ways, if you're a big time entrepreneur or big company, ways to think about limiting tax liability, ways to help your business with technologies such as VastQ or quantum in general, or artificial intelligence at a minimum.
Yeah, and I have to second that. You're very passionate about what you do, and thank you so much for giving that offer to someone, especially who's always just trying to save a little bit of money. It always helps. So, thank you so much for joining us at What's Kenner French Thinking podcast, and we will be back next time to ask Kenner, what are you thinking?